Thranduil stood as one of the most commanding and remarkable elven rulers of the Third Age, and significantly, the only one of his kind in that era to formally bear the title of king. His realm in Mirkwood was, for a time of fading glory, still large and resilient, and he tenaciously resisted the encroachment of Sauron's shadow. Yet despite fighting the same enemy, Thranduil remained distant from the other elven lords, who also rose against the Dark Lord. He was never summoned to the White Council, never consulted in military strategies, and never granted access to their intelligence. At first sight, this might seem like exclusion, but the truth was subtler. Most likely, Thranduil himself preferred to keep apart, especially from Galadriel and Elrond. The reason was not pride alone. Deeper still lay a long-standing divide, born of an ancient feud between two great elven houses, the Sindar and the Noldor. Thranduil descended from the Sindar, while Galadriel and, in part, Elrond were of Noldorin blood, and not just any Noldor, but of the clan of the Exiles, whose violent deeds left wounds that the Sindar never forgot. To understand this estrangement, we must trace its roots. In the years of the trees, the Noldor lived in bliss beneath the Valar in Aman. But when Morgoth stole the Silmarils, many of them, Galadriel among them, chose to abandon the blessed realm, seeking both vengeance and independence. The problem was their lack of ships. For vessels, they turned to the Teleri, masters of the sea. The Teleri refused, honoring the will of the Valar. Enraged, some of the Noldor slaughtered the Teleri and seized their ships. Though Galadriel did not take part in the bloodshed, her closest kin were deeply involved. For Thranduil, this was no distant tale. The Sindar traced their kinship to the Teleri. Their first king, Thingol, was the brother of Olwe, lord of the Teleri in Aman. To the Sindar, the Noldor's crime was an unforgivable betrayal. When the Noldor came to Middle-earth, they entered Beleriand, the domain of Thingol, king of Doriath, under whom Orifer, Thranduil's father, served as a vassal. Some of the Noldor accepted Thingol's authority, but many scoffed at him as too arrogant and established their own realms without consent, a grave insult. Galadriel appeared an exception. She dwelt at Thingol's court, learned from Melian, his queen, and wed Celeborn, Thingol's kinsman. Yet in elven culture, guilt of a house extended to all its members. Forgiveness was not so easily granted. The rift deepened when a Silmaril came into the hands of Thingol's grandson Dior. Refusing to yield it to the sons of Feanor, he drew upon Doriath a violent assault. The kingdom was destroyed in fire and massacre. Thranduil and Orifer barely escaped, fleeing east with survivors into Greenwood the Great. There they rose to lead the Nandor Elves, but the memory of their fallen homeland and the Noldor's role in its ruin burned deep. In the Second Age, Thranduil had no choice but to fight alongside the Noldor once more. When Gil-galad and Elrond summoned them against Sauron, Orifer and Thranduil answered. But they refused to follow Noldorin command. Fighting independently, they fell into disaster. The Mirkwood host was surrounded, and Orifer, with half his army, perished. Thranduil survived, yet he likely never forgave Elrond and Gil-galad, even if his own pride played a part in the calamity. Nevertheless, during the War of the Ring, Thranduil overcame old grievances. His warriors aided the men of Dale and the dwarves of Erebor against the Easterlings. After Sauron's fall, he joined Galadriel and Celeborn in cleansing Mirkwood and destroying Dol Guldur. With Círdan the shipwright, descendant of the Teleri, Thranduil had no quarrel. They were close in blood, though little is recorded of their dealings. Celeborn, as kin of Thingol, stood formally above him, yet in battle they fought as equals. Thus Thranduil emerged as a ruler who could balance pride with necessity. He remembered old betrayals, yet for the sake of his people he marched even beside those he mistrusted. And so we arrive at the unwritten chapters of Thranduil's history, absent from the Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings, but adding layers to his character. Legends, speculations, and forgotten tales shed light on why he chose the paths he did. Thranduil's tale is often told only in fragments. We glimpse him as Thorin's jailer, as Bard's ally, and as Sauron's adversary. But what of the silent centuries? It is often in quiet reigns, not in wars, that a king's true measure is revealed. After Doriath's fall, Thranduil and Orifer found themselves among the Nandor of Greenwood, a people with no palaces, no hierarchy, but lives woven into the forest's breath. Thranduil, raised in Doriath's refinement, at first treated them as subjects rather than kin. Yet the years softened him. He came to see that Mirkwood was no mere dwelling place but a living presence. Its legends spoke of Nornal, a spirit born at the first sunrise, who had witnessed the first elves walk beneath its branches. Nornell, it was said, permitted the Sindar and Nandor to unite under Thranduil's banner. This bond became Mirkwood's strength. The forest shielded its people, veiled their halls, and warned of foes. But the pact bore a cost. Thranduil swore never to abandon the forest for long. He broke this vow only once, and when the last alliance, and in that war lost his father and countless kin. Few remember that after Beleriand sank, Thranduil and Orifer wandered long east of the Blue Mountains before reaching Greenwood. There Thranduil first encountered men, and the meeting was bitter. In one village near Durin's threshold, men welcomed them with smiles, but by night tried to sell them to orcs in exchange for safety. Thranduil escaped, but from then on his trust in men was fragile. Only later, in his dealings with Bard, did he accept that not all were treacherous. Even before Thorin's time, he had uneasy ties with the dwarves of Erebor. Records tell of a pact. Mirkwood supplied rare herbs and timber. Erebor gave weapons of unmatched craft. But when Smaug came, the alliance broke. Some accused Thranduil of refusing aid when the dwarves called for help. He insisted it was their battle to fight, but the guilt may have haunted him. Perhaps that guilt explains his actions in The Hobbit. He would not help Thorin, yet he did not seek his ruin either. Thranduil was among the first to sense the rise of Dol Guldur. The songs of the forest faltered, the birds fled north, and the stars themselves grew dim. He ordered his borders fortified and set watch on the shadows. Some mocked him as paranoid, but he knew what was stirring, and vowed Mirkwood would not fall, as Doriath once had. After Sauron's fall, Thranduil shifted his halls south into the cleansed forest, opening Mirkwood to greater ties with men and dwarves. Yet he did not forget the old rifts. Galadriel and Elrond sailed west, and Celeborn alone remained. According to some tales, Thranduil proposed a union of their realms, but Celeborn declined, choosing to lead the remnants of Lothlorien alone. In his later reign, children were born once more in Mirkwood, a miracle in the waning years of elvendom. Many took it as a blessing of the Valar, and credited Thranduil for preserving his people when so many others faded into memory.